Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new series called Design and Quilt Monthly, presented by me. I'm Mark Garretts, a National R&K educator. And in this series of videos, we're going to do one every month, and we're going to be focusing on a new program from Quilter Select called Design and Quilt. And this month's episode is going to be a basic overview of what the program is, what it does, and some of the features. So before we get into the program, let's take a look at just some of the resources that are already available. And I'm going to tell you how, even if you don't have Design and Quilt right now, you can get a trial copy so you can either follow along and or play with the software to decide if it's something you want to purchase. So what you want to do is you want to go to the rnksoftware.club website. Okay, and I will put a big URL across the screen here, rnksoftware.club. And this is a website, so it's subject to change the way it looks. But right now, this is the way it looks as of March 2023. And you can see right here, there's a big banner advertising Design and Quilt. And you can click here on this link right here to download it. But if this goes away and they're promoting something else, there's a tab right here called Design and Quilt, and if we click on that, you will see there's a button right here called Download Design and Quilt, and you can go ahead and click that and download Design and Quilt, and then you can go ahead and install it once it downloads. If you don't already own it, you will of course not have a serial number to register it, but that's okay. It will work forever in demo mode, and demo mode works just like the regular program. The only thing it won't do is allow you to save anything. So it's great to play with, but you can't save anything. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to hit the back button on my browser, and we're going to go back here, back to this Design and Quilt tab, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And here are a bunch of videos and resources that already exist about Design and Quilt, and these will be updated as we go along as well. So my series is similar to some of these, but it's always good to get a different perspective on how the program works and the tools and the cool things you can do with it. So that's why we're doing another series about it. But Trevor and other educators have done lots of videos already on Design and Quilt. So feel free to come here and check out all of the things that it can do. So when you open up Design and Quilt, you'll be presented with this page, which is the My Today page. And this gives you a little information about the program. There's a picture of Alex Anderson. And this program was created in conjunction with Alex and features a lot of her quilt designs built in. There are about five things you can do from this page. One is create a new design. The other is open a new design. You can open the last thing you worked on. You can check to see what's new. And you can go into the help screens. So I'm going to go ahead and click create a new design. And when you do that, you will get a blank page. And this is where you can do a bunch of different things. If you're familiar with Floriani software, like our Total Quilter, My Decorative Quilter, or even FTCU, you'll notice a lot of similarities, but there are also a ton of differences. So let's go over some of the things that Design and Quilt does compared to the others. So speaking specifically about our previous quilting software, Total Quilter and My Decorative Quilter, those pieces of software were designed for embroiderers who want to do quilting with their embroidery machine. It can do, or they can do, traditional quilting as well, but they weren't oriented that way. On the other hand, Design and Quilt is made for quilters who want to quilt traditionally with a sewing machine and or a long arm quilter for doing the actual quilting stitches. And you can also do quite a bit of quilting with your embroidery machine with this, so you can add embroidery designs. But mainly this is a program for people who want to create not only quilt blocks, but entire quilts using an easy-to-use software. And that's what Design and Quilt does. Now, Design and Quilt has basically two sides to it. One is the design a quilt block and whole quilt side, where you're going to be designing quilt blocks and whole quilts from those quilt blocks. And then there's an embroidery side. So some of the icons only work on the embroidery side, some of the icons only work on the quilting design side. What we're going to focus on initially in this series is the designing a quilt side and not the embroidery side. We will get to that eventually, but what we're going to do today especially is take a look at the quilting features. So as I've said a couple times now, Design and Quilt is designed to allow you to create quilt blocks and also create entire quilts out of those quilt blocks. So let's take a look at some of those features. So they kind of start right here with these yellow icons. So this is a built-in quilt block library. So you can start with built-in quilt blocks. This is built-in quilts, so you can start with entire quilts. And then you can create your own block in two different ways. These purple icons. This one is create an easy block, and this is create an advanced block. Now, if you're familiar with other Floriani software, this icon right here, which is lit up, which is my normal selection tool, this is used mainly in embroidery or drawing mode, but not when you're working with quilts or quilt blocks. Instead, we have a different select icon, which is our piece select here, and this selects either pieces of a block or the entire block. This one isn't lit up yet. It's about foundation piecing. And these are not lit up either because we don't have any quilt blocks that we're working with. When we want to design a whole quilt, those are these icons over here. So this starts a new quilt layout. This is a way to select a block as opposed to a piece, which is over here. So this is our block select tool. This allows us to add a border, and this allows us to add an outer border. So we can add inner borders or outer borders. This allows us to delete a block, and this allows us to export our quilt files. Okay, so these are the icons that we're going to be working with initially. And once we start creating a block, this icon is our create a line. This is our create a circle or ellipse. And this is to edit and move our block points. These will come into play when we do our advanced block. But for now, what we're going to concentrate on is the easy block. And before we do that, let's go ahead and look at some of the built-in blocks. So if I go ahead and click this, it opens up in our Alex Anderson blocks. So it might open in a different place depending on what you last used. And so this is, or excuse me, these are blocks from Alex Anderson quilts that are built in. So these are blocks that were created to create the Alex Anderson quilts. If I click this arrow right here, this drop down, I can see I've got all these other blocks in here. So if I can go, for example, to 8-point stars. So here's a bunch of different 8-point star blocks. Here's, for example, eccentric blocks. And I've got all different kinds of blocks. This place right here, my blocks, you'll see that there's a few things I've created. So when you create your own blocks, they go into this my blocks directory by default. You get some on point blocks here. So these are blocks where things are on point. And traditional blocks, all different kinds of blocks already built in that you can choose from. So let's go ahead and open up a block. Let's do a diamond and square block, and let's just pick a basic easy block to look at here. So let's pick this one right here. And when we do that, it opens up, and you can see that we've got basically 8 triangles. They're all basically the same triangle, but they're in different orientations, and they are, of course, different colors. So if I go ahead and go up here, so you just notice right away that when I open up a block, this normal select tool is no longer active. What's active automatically is my piece select. So if I come here and I click, I can select this piece, I can select this piece, etc. if I hold down Control, I can select multiple pieces at the same time if I want to operate on them all at the same time. So in this block mode, there are just a few basic things we can do. We can basically recolor the blocks. That's done down here with our color palette library. You have a bunch of different libraries you could select from. This is the default. So let's say I want to recolor this outside triangle here. And I can use one of the colors that's already in my design, which is this upper palette right here, or I can select something from the palette down here. So let me go ahead and select this green, and that changes that to the green. Now I probably want to change all of these to that green, so I could just keep repeating that. I could select this one, click the green again here. Now the greens appeared in my palette of the design, so I know exactly which one to pick. So I could do that, and if I want to do them all at the same time, let me actually undo twice, and I'll select this one. I'll hold down the Control key. Now you can't see it, but I'm holding down Control on my keyboard. So I'll select that one, I'll select this one, I'll select this one. So now I've got all my outside triangles selected, and I'll go ahead and click that green one more time. And now they're all filled in with that particular color. So far what we've been working with here is solid colors, and it's basically a thread palette, and this thread palette here happens to be the Quilter Select Cotton fabric colors, or thread colors rather. And if I want to change the palette, I can click here and change to a different thread chart. So that will give me different colors. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to re-click that one, because what I want to show you is that not only can you use solid colors, you can also use fabrics to fill this in. And when I use fabric pictures to fill in these blocks, then I get a really good representation of what my actual quilt is going to look like. So how do we do that? The way we do that is, first of all, we want to select the blocks that, or pieces of the block that we want to fill with fabric. So let's go ahead and select our corners. So I'm going to hold down Control and click all 4 corner triangles. Then I'm going to click this icon right down here, which is called our pop-up palette. So when I click it, it's going to expand the pop-up palette. Now what you'll see initially is the same thread colors that you have down here, just in a little bit different format, a little bit easier to see all the colors. And what I can do though is I can click this little button here and switch to fabrics. Now what you'll see initially are the fabrics that we give you that come with the software that's built in. There aren't a ton of fabrics in here, but it's easy to add your own fabrics. We'll go over how to do that in another lesson. But for now, what we can do is we can pick a pattern that's already here. So let's, I don't know, let's pick this Floral 6, and I'll click it. And you can see that right now, it's gone ahead and put those fabrics into those blocks. So I'm just going to close my palette here, and I could repeat that with different fabrics in here, but you get the idea. So once we have our blocks, then of course we would move over and start to create a quilt grid layout and look at what our entire quilt would look like. So let's go ahead and pop over and do some of that right now. Okay, so I'm going to come right here to this icon, which is a new quilt layout. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to open up a quilt grid that is right now 4 by 4. And over here in my properties box, I can change the number of blocks in my grid. I can change the size of the block. I can change the sashing and the sashing type, and whether or not I want these blocks to be on point or not, which is a new cool feature that's only in Design and Quilt. Our previous quilting software, you could only make them normal. You couldn't put the blocks on point. So let's go ahead and leave it 4 by 4. Let's get rid of our sashing for now. So the way to do that is you just set these to 0. So I'm just going to type over a 0 and a 0 in the width and the height here and click Apply. And so now I don't have any sashing. Okay, so I want to start now filling this quilt grid with quilt blocks so we can see what our quilt is going to look like. Now I have a couple different ways I can do that. One is to come over here to the block that I've been working on, which is this diamond and square block. And you'll notice that there's different tabs here and they're different colors. So design 1, if I click on it, it's a blank design that we started with. When we open a block, it opens in a new tab, which is what we did. We opened this diamond and square, but I changed it from the way it was in the original. So you can see here that there's a little asterisk by this, and this means that I haven't yet saved it. And I'm not going to save it because it will overwrite this block. I don't want to do that right now. But we could save it wherever we want and come back to it later. And that asterisk, of course, means I haven't saved it. And you'll notice that this block is blue, or kind of a turquoise color, and that tells me that this is a quilt block. And then anything that's brown in a tab is my actual quilt grid itself. Okay, so what I can do is come over here to my block in my sequence view, select it, and you'll notice that now my copy icon is lit up here. So I can click copy, and then I can come back to my design of my quilt block, and I can select this block. And you'll notice when I come back to this tab that my quilt block select tool is active. Okay, so it automatically switches my active between them when I go to a quilt block design versus a quilt design. So now if I right click on this, I have a couple of options. I can paste it to this block, I can paste it to all blocks, paste it to the row, paste it to the column, or paste it to every other. So let's go ahead and just do a paste to this one. And you can see here that now I've got that quilt block in this quilt grid. If I wanted to, I could paste it to all the blocks if I wanted this same block to be the way my quilt is. And you can see how now I've got a complete quilt layout except for my borders. And you can go to the pieced border here and enable that. So that would give you piecing pieces in here. But right now we have a more traditional sashing border. So again, the way I would want to color that is I could select the piece. I could select a color. So let's do this red, and it will do that color. And again, I can control click the rest of them and put that red in, and that'll just use a solid color for it. I could also do the same thing and put a fabric in my sashing. And of course we can also do pieced borders. Once I have a border selected, you can see I can change the size of it. I can change the style. Right now it's mitered. I could change it to blocked and click apply. And it would put a block in the corner. It takes our color out when we do that, so we have to recolor it because it doesn't want to put the same color everywhere. We could change it to strip horizontal, which means it's going to make a strip across the top and then a smaller strip on the sides. If we want that to be the other way, we would choose strip vertical and click apply, and now the strip would cut off the horizontal piece. So those are our border options, and we can add borders on top of borders on top of borders. We could do a solid border like this, and we could do a pieced border on the outside. The possibilities are really endless. So that's a quick overview of what the whole point of the program is. What I want to do now is start a new block. I just want to quickly show you the different ways that we create blocks. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my new icon here to get a new page. That opens up a blank page, and now I can start creating a block. So I could do it one of two ways. I can do my easy block, or I can do my advanced block. So let's look at what an easy block is. If I click that, it's going to open up yet another new page, and it's going to give me a grid of something. Now that something is controllable over here, so we can do rectangles, or we can do quarter square triangles, half square triangles pointing up, or half square triangles pointing down. So let's go ahead and stick with rectangle right now. So this gives us a number of rectangles across, a number down, so it defaults to 8. They're 1 inch by 1 inch rectangles, and the total size here is 8 by 8. Right? So what we can do is we can start selecting these to create a quilt block. Okay, so let's just create a simple block. Let me select the 4 in the center here. Now I can select that one, or I could select that one simply by clicking. If I want to select multiples, again, I can hold down Control and I can click these. And the idea is not that these are individual block pieces, but we're building block pieces out of these basic shapes. So I'm going to have this square in the center here. In order to have the software treat this as one piece, what I need to do is unite it. And I can do that one of two ways. I can either right click here and click Unite, or I can come up here to this icon right here, which is Unite. And when I do that, it shows you dotted lines where the blocks were, or the squares, the underlying were, but this is now a piece. All right, so if I fill this with a color, let's fill it with red. Now we've got red. Okay, so I could start to build, say, a log cabin out of this by selecting this block, holding down Control, selecting that block, and this might be our first piece in that design. So I'd want to come up here and click Unite, and I can color these as I go along, or I can come back and color them later. But let's go ahead and color it as we go along. Let's pick a pink. All right, and now I want to select these 3 to go along the side. Now I can do that Control click, but there's another way I can do it, and that is with the lasso tool. All right, so that is this tool right here, the lasso piece select. So if I click that, I can click and drag a circle around the block pieces that I want, and I don't have to connect it. As long as I've got a straight line between the 2 ends, I can just let off my mouse, or actually I can right click it, and it will select those 3 blocks. So anything that was totally inside is going to be selected, and anything that was only partially, like I was going through these blocks up here, they're not selected. So again, I'm going to click Unite to unite those. Let's make that a green. Okay, so there's that one. Okay, now we could do the same over here. So I'm still in my lasso mode, so I can draw a circle around those guys and right click and select those, unite them, and I can select green again for that side. So you can see how I can start to create a quilt block using these basic shapes. All right, now one other way you can use the lasso tool, if you don't want to freehand draw, if I want to now say do all of these right here, so these 4 down here, I can click a point, come down here, click a point, over here, click a point, and right click, and now I've selected those 4. So you can either do it by clicking points, or you can just click and drag to create your selection, and then don't forget you always want to unite it and then color it. Okay, because if you, let me do an undo. Okay, so if I undo again, they're not even selected anymore. So let me select them once again. Don't know if I got them all. Nope, I didn't. Let me try that one more time. Okay, got them all. If I color it now, so let me color it with a different color. Let's color it with this blue. You can see that I see these little dotted lines in here, and this is telling me that even though it looks like one piece, when I go to create my actual quilt piecing diagram, so I can cut the pieces out for this and calculate my fabric, it's going to treat this as 4 little squares, and I don't want that. I want them to be united into a strip. So I have to remember always to go ahead and click Unite, or right click and click Unite. So that's how the basics of the easy block work. And let's take a look at the underlying shapes here. So let me just change it to quarter square triangles, click Apply, and it's going to reset everything, and I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. So you can see here now what I've got is these triangles. So if I wanted to create a triangle block like we were working on in the first instance, what I could do is drag around these guys. Oops, I went too far. Let me right click. I'll just undo that. Got to make sure you know what you're doing. Whoops, I'm going to change back to quarter square triangles. Click apply. Once again, it's going to warn me it's going to get rid of what I did. Let's go ahead, instead of having me drag a circle, I'll just use the click method. So I'm going to come up here and click. I'm going to come just past the center point and click. Then I'm going to come down here and click, and come across here and click, come out here and click again, and I've messed it up again. So, but anyway, you get the idea that this is how you select triangle pieces. So I really wanted to be here. So let me try that one more time. Let me click here and come around like this. There we go. Now I've got that triangle. I'll unite it, and now I can color it. So I can keep doing that and create my patterns. If I need to do a square, of course that's possible. I just could do this like this, and I've got a square because these triangles are can be made into squares or triangles. So if I've got triangle blocks and square blocks, this is the layout that I want to use. And I've got an awful lot here. If your quilt block is not that complicated, like let me undo that square that I just did. Heck, let's go back all the way. I could change the number here. So I really don't need to do 8. I could make this simple. I could do, say, 4 and click apply. And now, even though my block looks smaller, I can double click my magnifying glass to make it big. And you can see now I've got a less busy design, so it's easier for me to see where that corner triangle is here. So that's how the Easy Block Creator works. Let's go ahead. I'm going to unselect this by coming back here up to my Piece Select tool. And let's go ahead and create another new piece. And I'm going to use the Create Advanced Block icon. And this is a little bit different. This is similar to the way we created blocks in Total Quilter or My Decorative Quilter, but it's much improved. So the way we create a design with this one is we click and we drag lines. And so, for example, if I want to create that triangle, I'm just going to create intersecting lines. I don't need to worry about my outside dimension. If I just want to create that corner triangle, I can just click here in the corner and drag a line up to here, let off the mouse, and that creates that particular piece. So I can come and do another one here, like this. I'll do another one here, and then I'll do a final one here. And what I've just created, very simply, is a diamond in a square. So I can now come here to my Piece Select tool, and you can see that here I've got a piece, here I've got a piece, I've got a big square in the center, and here's another piece. If I want to recreate that block where this diamond was split up, I can come back here to my block line tool, click that, and add some more lines. So I can click across the center here, and I've got Snap to Grid turned on, so it is snapping to the points on this grid that you can see here, which makes it easy to get nice straight lines and line stuff up. And come down here and click that one, and I didn't quite get that one right. Let me do it again. It's actually snapping to the points, it's not snapping to the grid. And I can come back here to my Piece Select now, and now I've got individual pieces here, and I can start coloring them. So you can see it's pretty easy to create a quilt block and a quilt. This is, like I say, not detail. This is a quick overview of the basics of the program. Once we have a quilt block, Like let's go here to my design 2 where I have a quilt already put together. And let's go ahead and color in our sashing. So let's select our sashing. I'm going to hold down Control and select all of it. And let's use a color that's already in the quilt. We'll use this blue. And so now my quilt is complete. If I come here to export quilt files, it will export all the files. But let's see what it's going to export. The way I do that is with this button right here, which is my print preview. So this is going to come out on the screen so we can take a look at what kind of output we're going to get from it. So these are my presets here, my print settings. I can set my margins, my fabric width, my fabric cut minimum, my fabric cut increase, my piece layout, and whether or not I want to print the full quilt, whether I want to include grid lines, color numbers, only the outline, piece analysis, fabric summary, actual print sizes, seam allowances, all that stuff. And I can click OK. And here's where I'd set my seam allowance. You'll notice that when we were working in the quilt itself and with the quilt blocks, we had no seam allowance. This allows us to set it globally for the entire quilt, which is nice, so I don't have to decide what I want to use in the beginning. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And this shows me my first page here. The way to get to the next page is to click this next page icon right here. So this is just showing me a picture of what the quilt's going to look like. So this is for reference. Here is some information. So this is the total finished size of the quilt as we have it right now. It's 36 by 36 inches. There's 132 pieces. My block size is 8 by 8. The number of blocks is 16. The number of pieces in each block, number of pieces is 128, and the number of pieces per block is 8. Now, why is this number of pieces different here and here? That's because this includes the sashing, which is here, and or the borders rather, because there's no sashing. But the 4 border pieces plus 128 gives us our 132. So here's all the information about the quilt. If I go to the next page, this shows me an overview of what I need to cut. So these are my sizes, including seam allowance. Okay, so it shows me how many pieces of this fabric I need to cut, how many pieces of this color, etc. And that's pretty cool. Here is showing me how much fabric I need for each color. Okay, so I need 5/8 of a yard here. I need 1/4 yard of the rest of them and 1/2 yard for my border. All right, I'm going to go down here, and here are my actual pieces showing me what it looks like with the seam allowance. All right, so it doesn't show me each individual piece. It just gives me one template per piece. And this shows me the block layout. So it shows it all 16 to me, even though they're all the same. If I use different blocks, you'd see the different blocks here. And then here is an overview of which block piece goes where. So I know where to put each one, right? So that's the output. And if I print this, this is what it would look like when it comes out of the printer. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to end it for now. So this was a rather long video. In the future, they'll be a little bit shorter, or quite a bit shorter. But there was a lot to cover, and we didn't nearly get into all the things that Design and Quilt can do. So next month, I invite you to come back, and we'll get into some more of the things that it can do. Like, for example, I didn't even get a chance to show you that it can do foundation piecing and show you how to put the foundation together, etc. Very, very nice. A lot of other features, a lot of other things it can do. So come on back next month and months after that for the next episodes of Design and Quilt Monthly.